And I would say right now we're at a fever pitch. They're becoming more aggressive and becoming more sinister in how they're trying to control speech and how they're trying to control minds. And that represents the last squeals of a dying animal. I hope that when people watch my podcasts, I give them the permission to think again.
Howdy everyone, welcome to a special episode of The Red Hot Show this week with none other than Candace Owens. This was filmed just prior to the lackey Australian government and the Zionist Association of Australia cancelling her visa. But nonetheless, it is a timely and insightful interview that I'm sure you will enjoy. More to come on the visa cancellation on my Instagram. I'll be covering that in more depth. This episode, as always, is sponsored by my company, Cashew, where we follow the money to make money. Get our stock packs, which have absolutely killed it the last 3 years, with the link below, 70% off, exclusive deal for the next 48 hours. Let's get stuck in, and I hope you enjoy this very, very special episode of The Red Hot Show. So, Candace, welcome. Look, I feel blessed to have you on ahead of your upcoming New Zealand and Australia tour, which I'll be attending and hopefully seeing you in Brisbane. You don't really need an introduction, but I'm going to give you a short one anyway. You've been an absolute champion of free speech and inspired, I'm sure, millions and millions of people around the world. And in my opinion, an instrumental pillar in the truth-seeking movement that we find more and more people joining each day. You've influenced the public consciousness more than I'm sure you'd give yourself credit for. And you've inspired millions of people, as I said, around the world to critically think and find their voice on more important issues. And it's an absolute pleasure today to be able to talk to you for a short time. So Candace, welcome. Hope you're doing well.
Thank you so much. Such a kind introduction. So kind of you to say all those things.
You're very welcome, and I mean every word. And I think you'll get a lot of love when you come over here. And it's all very exciting for the people of Australia. So I've got a series of questions, pretty straightforward ones, and a pretty easy one to kick things off. What are you looking forward to most about coming to Australia?
Well, I always find that whenever I travel, you sort of have, I would say, media depictions of what a culture is like and what a people are like. And then those are pretty quickly blown up when you go somewhere, and in a good way. Like you actually get a real sense of the culture. I mean, just last week I was in Japan, and I had always imagined what Japan might be like. And it was so fascinating to be there and get a sense of how they think, which is always a little bit different from how we think, sometimes drastically different from how we think. And, there has always been this idea of Australian and American synergy. So I'm very excited to see what similarities we have, what differences we have, and to learn more about how your history impacts your culture.
Beautiful. And look, it'd be remiss of me not to bring up the Kamala genealogy a little bit, because I have been following very closely, and I actually ironically did a piece on it a couple of weeks before you. I got this weird thought to go and use the Wayback Machine. I'm not sure if you're familiar with that. The
very
search
familiar.
Engine. Yeah, and I went through her Wikipedia and Britannica and a few other sites from 2010 to 2012, and it was amazing to see the lack of references to her being African-American Black compared to now. So I sort of propagated that idea of why is there this real urge to push this narrative? And it actually did quite well. Like I went quite viral on Twitter, and then you came out with your story, and I was like, wow, what's going on here? This is mind-blowing. There was credence to my intuition and suspicions. But I wanted to just quickly get your take on, and I'll send all the listeners over to watch your series because you've done such a meticulous job at covering it. But what is your thoughts on her core motivation, you think, to try and pull something like this off?
And it's crazy to think that she almost pulled it off successfully. really just the benefit of a lack of time for people to go through anything because she wasn't the choice nominee. She just was sort of inserted. It was like, sorry, Biden's dead. Here's Kamala, and you've got a few weeks and then you got to vote on the issue. And, fortunately, I kind of had a hunch about her in general because she just was putting on so many various accents at different times that there was something about it that was very inorganic. And then, of course, she did the unthinkable. Her media went after Janet Jackson and for saying quite innocently, like, I heard that she's actually not black, when someone kind of was making it seem as though Janet Jackson had to support her because she was the first black. And the way the media attacked Janet to me seemed abnormal. And what I tend to find is that when the media overreacts to something, it's because there's something they're trying to hide, right? Because anybody can say a throwaway comment like, "Oh, I heard like Candace, it might be part Hispanic." No one cares, but they really deeply cared and attacked her in a way that made me go, I'm learning the media trade a bit and how it works. And so I had never expected, when I went on this journey to discover what I discovered, I had never purchased her book before and didn't realize this sort of really overt effort to blackify her, even with like fake black uncles and aunties, where like just a small sentence in her book will tell you they're not her real aunties, but every picture, here's me in Harlem, here's me in my afro. Like, really, does every reference have to be sort of this black stereotype? And really what we've uncovered is, first and foremost, she completely lied about her black relatives. So far, she went so far as to present a picture of a very black woman as her grandmother. Strangely, she never references the woman in her book. It's just a photo, like me and my grandma Beryl. And it turns out it's not her grandma at all. Like, there was a grandma Beryl that she had, but that was a Irish looking light skinned woman who was lighter than Kamala, and her sister was even whiter than that. And we've uncovered from her family members reaching out, who are very against her communist stances, that she is a part Irish, part Syrian Jew. We've yet to uncover any actual blackness in her story. And she's now gone completely mum on the topic of her race, like ran aggressively on that for the first couple of weeks, and then suddenly doesn't want any journalist to even ask her questions about her race, which signifies to us that everything we've uncovered is accurate. And they're just hoping 2 more weeks till we get to the polls, we're just going to keep our heads down and just ignore the fact that we completely pulled a political blackface, which is really what it is. It's ancestral blackface.
Yeah, it's frightening. And it is. It's like a gaslighting clinic. They do that. That is the telltale sign, isn't it? When they get aggressive and they basically negate any challenge of those sorts of things. It is the sign of the media
deceit.
manipulating. Exactly.
Yeah.
I could go on. I would love to go into detail with you, but I've got to get through these questions. So I would love to
No
talk
worries.
about it at length, because I have a million questions just on that story alone. But tell me about what first inspired you to start expressing yourself within the political sphere.
There were a couple of moments. I think for me, it really came out of a place of anger and disbelief when I came to terms with the fact that the media lied to me about everything. Like, I truly believed this victim narrative that, Republicans and conservatives are racist and they just want to go back to the time when black people are picking cotton. And then, when Trump ran, I actually wasn't as supportive of him, but I knew him because he was so cultural. And I have always paid close attention to culture. And I just didn't buy the 180 switch from this guy was loved and on every network and on every late night TV show for decades, and, allowed at red carpets and mentioned in rap songs, to like, just kidding, he's actually Adolf Hitler. It was too much whiplash, I think, for me. I went, okay, you can tell me he's like ill fit for the position, but you can't tell me he's Adolf Hitler that quickly. And so I just got interested in how strange it was that they were really trying to sell him as this totally scary nightmare individual. And it made me question my relationship with the media. And I decided to then therefore listen to Donald Trump in his own words. And I was just so shocked on how much they lied about virtually everything he said in 2015. So that was kind of a light bulb moment. And then I decided I actually wasn't politically inclined and needed to actually pay attention. And I felt very duped, very duped by the not just the political machine and the media, but also by the education system, which they all work hand in hand. I mean, the education system, I had majored in journalism. They told us, reliable sources before they mentioned words like disinformation and misinformation. It was like, well, what are the trusted and reliable sources? And here are the networks you can trust. And it turned out that those were actually the networks that you could trust the least. They were a part of the establishment. And really what they are working to establish are your thoughts.
And how have you mentally coped, like in times recently of intense ridicule for expressing yourself and fighting the good fight, so to speak?
Yeah. I think over the years I've become quite impervious to it. Like I've always been persona non grata in the media in certain ways. Has it maybe heightened this year and grown more vicious? Sure, because now I'm independent and I still have a large audience and they really don't like that, right? There has to be some mechanism of control. And I no longer really kind of say I only agree with Republicans. Like they kind of want you to always box yourself in. And I've really outgrown that. I've really understood that all of us are being duped. And here's kind of what people on the left have gotten right. Like I'm anti-vax. And actually it was the liberals that were really speaking about big pharma before conservatives got on board. And so I find myself allied with them in those points and find myself allied with conservatives in economics. And so really I've over the years, like I would say I've always had a thick skin naturally. I developed more so over the years, having been like the lone voice that stood up against Black Lives Matter when it was like the global media sensation. And so with time, you just kind of realize they go through these vicious cycles, but they aren't actually the people, right? What actually matters is the people that are following you believe what they're saying. And I have an audience of people who know one thing to be true, which is that the media lies to them routinely about everyone. So I'm safe in that regard. And of course, like I have just a very strong family. Like, my husband, my source of energy and inspiration and happiness comes from the home. So that's not something that can be taken from me externally.
Absolutely. And what is your ultimate goal with the work that you do?
I always say that I hope that when people watch my podcasts, I give them the permission to think again. I think that's ultimately what's been taken from us. It's been taken from us because if we have a question, just like we said, they pound on you. How dare you question? And so you're fearful to even ask a question. You're fearful to be wrong, and now we're living in a society where when we grew up, it was like, there's no such thing as a stupid question. And now suddenly we're at a place where they say, every question is stupid. We'll tell you what to think and don't question the narrative at all. And I'm showing people that that's actually perfectly okay. You are allowed to not know things. You're allowed to ask questions, and you should be immediately suspicious of any person that wants to discount your ability to think, like critically think through things. And don't be fearful of getting something wrong, because guess what? You are going to get things wrong. Like when you become a critical thinker, you are going to go, okay, I thought this and it's wrong. And then you pivot your thought and you've got a new hypothesis, and you keep going. And I think it's pretty old fashioned, but I hope that when people watch my show and they see me do it and be ridiculed by the media for doing it, that they know that who cares? It's so much more fun to think.
Yeah, whatever happened to that saying? I remember that a lot as a kid, but it's almost disappeared now, the saying of there's no such thing as a stupid question.
Yeah.
Crazy. I was actually recently on the Alex Jones show a few weeks ago, which was an awesome experience. And we talked a lot about this drastic shift towards independent investigative journalism, much like what you just touched on. Since going independent, you've had more free reign, which has been amazing. And it's also sort of fanned this flame of the public consciousness, which is a term that I've kind of coined and I really like using. And I think we're moving in the right direction. How do you see this recent surge in public consciousness and critical thinking, for that matter, playing out? Like, do you think the good versus evil wins? What's the time frame? Like, what do you see the where do you think all the pieces on the chess table fall?
Yeah, I mean, I would say right now we're at a fever pitch because so many people are awake. I mean, you can even see this in the top shows that are on Spotify right now. It's like me, Tucker Carlson, Joe Rogan, people that have stepped outside and gone independent. And so what that does is it really threatens the establishment. And so what we're also seeing at the same time and why people are like, it's never been worse, is they're growing increasingly radical in their language. They don't really know how to get this genie back in the bottle. And to tell you the truth, it's never going to go back into the bottle, right? So they're becoming more aggressive and becoming more sinister in how they're trying to control speech and how they're trying to control minds and laws they're trying to get passed to penalize people for thinking. And so I think for me, I am an eternal optimist. So I always say to people, when you see that, rather than being so fearful when they're like calling for like disinformation police, whatever it is, know that that represents the last squeals of a dying animal, right? Like a
Very good
dying
analogy.
animal thrashes the hardest, right? And so I'm very much encouraged by their squeals and their thrashes.
Yeah, I could see it. It comes through the screen whenever I watch your stuff. It's good.
I'm a,
Um,
I'm a happy warrior. And I think that drives them the most crazy. They're like, we've written 89,000 hit pieces about her. Why is she smiling?
it's good stuff. I take joy as well. Um, and on a more specific note, around that notion, how do you see this election resulting?
Listen, I've taken myself out of the political prognostication game because I am one of the true believers in the fact that our election was rigged in 2020. I've said it from the very beginning, and I will never back down from that. This is one of those things where they're trying to scream at us. And, no, I was there. I witnessed what happened, and this has never been the way an election has been run. They don't just stop counting votes in the middle of the night. We've seen the videos of people dropping stuff off, and they've in some states like California passed through like everyone gets a mail-in ballot no matter what. That's just you fundamentally change the way that we voted because of COVID. And so I am worried about those political changes. I think I'm a bit apprehensive about whether or not we have addressed those problems. If we were speaking plainly on the merits, I would say Trump is going to win. I said that in 2020 because I believe he did win the 2020 election and then it was stolen from him. But we are dealing with people that will stop at nothing for power. So I kind of sit back, pray, hope for the best, and know that in the end, I really do believe that it's in God's hands, and I do have the faith that in the end, no matter what, goodness wins.
Yeah, I concur. I have the same faith, which is all we can really hang on to.
Mm.
But from even more granular perspective, for someone like me in Australia, I've heard a lot of murmurs this week of even if he does win and they sort of maybe incite violence or civil unrest with the DOD passing that law last week, allowing really dystopian martial law being able to potentially kill civilians, like really scary stuff. Is there a route where they can actually not certify his win? Is that even possible? Because I've heard a lot of that lately.
Like I said, everything is possible for Biden to have become president. A person who's maybe legally brain dead, he can't even read off of a teleprompter, right? It makes everything possible, and so I'm aware of that. I also am aware, and I put a lot of faith in the fact that, one of the things that's really unique about America is that we have state rights, and the federal rights don't trump our state rights. And so every state is kind of its own country, and it does actually really matter where you live. And I think they know that, we're a very big country with 330 million people, and the government does not have the ability to control us all. They learned that during COVID. They were like, well, we're shutting down California. And Florida was like, well, we're staying open. And Tennessee was like, well, we're staying open. And so people began moving. So I do always place faith in that system as offering a rebuttal to some of the things that some of their more sinister aims.
Yeah, makes sense. Makes sense. Well, look, Candace, I know we didn't have much time, so it's been amazing to have a quick chat with you. And for everyone of my followers that will listen to this very soon, Candace is coming to Australia and New Zealand, so go get tickets. If you're into the stuff I talk about, you're definitely going to be into the stuff that she talks about. It'd be amazing to see you live. I'm very excited, and I'm sure all the followers that do get tickets, they'll enjoy it as well. So it's been a pleasure to chat with you today, and hopefully get to do it sometime in the future. But
Yes.
yes, I hope that you get here all safe and sound, and look forward to seeing you very soon.
Thank you so much. It's so lovely to join you, and I do hope that we get to meet up when I'm over there.